Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds with Sports and about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show following another Winnipeg Jets win over the Minnesota Wild, getting to be a habit here. They kind of own the Minnesota Wild. I'm going to tell you, the last time these two teams played those back-to-back games, the Wild came into those games just like they came into this one on a heater. They were 5 straight games, 5 straight wins on the road. Coming into tonight's game, the last time they played the Jets or went into playing against the Jets, they were the hottest team in the NHL since they had hired their coach. And the Jets sent them packing last time. I think at that time, in somewhat humiliating fashion, we're tougher than you, we're bigger than you, we're stronger than you, we're faster than you, we got better goaltending than you, we can skate better than you. I think that there's parts of this game that were a little less dominant for the Winnipeg Jets. I do think that Laurent Brossoit getting the first start of the game, even though the 3 goals were scored, was warranted. I think this is a different game if Laurent Brossoit isn't as good as he is at the top end of this game. And let's be honest, the 2 goals by the Minnesota Wild that make this a 6-3 game rather than a 6-1 game are garbage time goals, essentially, in that situation there. But the Winnipeg Jets, let's just say it like this. If the game had wrapped up after the second period, I would maybe feel a little bit different about this game because the first line seemed to have some of its issues at 5-on-5 because they had 3 goals on 9 shots. And it just kind of seemed like things were going for the Jets tonight. They weren't necessarily, I wouldn't say they weren't going for the Minnesota Wild. They just couldn't beat Laurent Brossoit. Fleury didn't look like he was having a great night to me either. The Mason Appleton goal, great spot for him to, put that there. That shouldn't necessarily be a goal that, goaltender's down on his knees and just not covering the top corner on the short side in that situation. But I kind of forgive it all the way the Jets played that third period. They were the better team, I thought, in the period in the game where they'd found a way to be better on the scoreboard heading into the third period. Clearly, their power play had a lot to do with that. We're going to have to really dive into that and kind of take a look at what, Ken thinks. I've got my thoughts on what's working so well with that power play right now. But, it's funny because I take a look at it afterwards now and it's kind of like, well, there's a lot to like in that game. I really liked Laurent Brossoit's game. I thought the third line had one of its best games in a long time. The power play is clearly something to be excited about. Sean Monahan is clearly something to be excited about. Gets a goal for the second line. Logan Stanley, we got to talk about him and how he came into this lineup. Great quotes from Rick Bowness after the game where he essentially said some of the personnel decisions made tonight had to do with the idea that, and we'd talked about this, I think we'd said it on the podcast, that Logan Stanley in his last game before he was taken out, before Brendan Dillon came back from his suspension, it was like, okay, that I thought was his best game as a pro. And now all of a sudden he gets pulled out of the lineup. Well, he left enough of an impression that his head coach said, we need to get him back in and we can't wait, creating that competition that we know about that is only going to ramp up when Ville Heinola gets back up to speed, according to his head coach. Some conspiracy theorists out there are telling you that that's not what's happening behind the scenes. And hey, who am I to say? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But there's a lot to like in this game. I just felt that there was a real point in that game, and I don't like these kind of things where the head coach, where they lose the game, he says, "Oh, I think a couple are in, and the puck just didn't go in the net for us, and we are actually pretty good in that game." I'm not a big one for that, so I'm not going to do that in this direction with the Minnesota Wild. But I will go as far as saying, if the Jets didn't get the goaltending that they got in this game, I think it could have been a very different game against the Minnesota Wild. But I'm fascinated now to see how the Minnesota Wild respond to this. I was on Fan 590 out of Toronto before the game talking with Kipper and Bourne. And I'd said, like, make no mistake, the last time the Minnesota Wild ran into the Winnipeg Jets broke the Minnesota Wild. They were making a push and a surge to get back into the playoffs, and the Winnipeg Jets lifted them up in the air and broke their backs over their knee like Bane from Batman It was them absolutely bodying that team and kind of shaking their faith in themselves. And I think it took until now for them to kind of get that faith back. And I think they walk into a game like this and just think, once again, you end up losing the game in the manner that they've lost it here, with the kind of ease, with the crowd being able to be jubilant and get some good cheers back in there. The thank you Hartman after the penalty that he took. I know that people loved the idea that the Winnipeg Jets scored on the power play after he took that penalty. But to me, with a team that there's potential for the Jets to see as they inch closer to being first place again in the Central Division, the way that they're playing, and another loss tonight, back-to-back losses for the Dallas Stars. So the Winnipeg Jets actually ahead of them in point percentage right now. But you never know. Potential for the Minnesota Wild to find their way back into the playoffs and maybe a first-round series against the Winnipeg Jets. I'll tell you this. I thought the Wild were plucky. They kept pushing throughout that game. They didn't give up. So, it would never be kind of an easy situation. But to me, this is just another game where a division rival, a team that you could potentially see in the playoffs, what is supposed to be a regional rival and a team that you may have butting heads with for years to come. I just think this is another seed planted by the Winnipeg Jets in the heads of the Minnesota Wild, saying that, you know what, sorry, you're just not good enough to hang with us. You don't have the roster to do it. You don't have the goaltending to do it. You don't have the scoring to do it. And quite honestly, you don't have, the strength and the backbone to do it. I like that kind of hockey. I like the kind of hockey, and I said this again on Fan 590. I like that what are you going to do about it attitude in hockey when you just feel like you've got one over on your opponent and there's nothing they could do about it. To me, this was another what are you going to do about it game by the Winnipeg Jets. Room for improvement, but definitely what are you going to do about it game. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business to get his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, everybody. Ken, you and I are just less than 24 hours away from going and seeing, not Sweet Lou, going and seeing Frankie. Frankie and the boys ourselves got a great lunch going on with him tomorrow. Going to be great to see him and catch up with him. In the meantime, we're looking great in his threads. This is a suit that I got from him some time ago, pulled it out of the closet. Still looks like $1 million, gotta say. And I still have the pictures for him to say, listen, put it with this shirt, this tie. Don't mess it up, Renny. I don't think I did here tonight. I think I'm looking good, just like you are. And of course, we look good because of Vittorio Rossi and Frankie and the boys down on Corden Avenue. So if you want to look as good as Kenny and Renny do, head on down to Vittorio Rossi. Walk in, loudly proclaim that Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys. They'll do you up right. Ken, interesting game here tonight. What'd you see?
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely a little looseness in the second period. I think that was evident for all to see. Looseness.
Sorry. Go on. I thought that's where you went.
Very strong start for the Jets, no doubt. Power play clicking. I mean, I think they got a little, took the foot off the gas at 5-1, I guess. But overall, I would say there were a lot of things to like from the Jets' effort. Obviously, coming off one of their worst of the year, if not the worst game of the year against the Calgary Flames after building a 3-1 lead. I don't think there was a huge letdown. I don't think that was their Rick Bowness obviously said there, Sean. I wasn't down there as I was writing, but they obviously didn't love the second, but they rebounded in the third and kind of squeezed the life out of their opponent outside of the power play marker. Really brilliant pass by Joel Eriksson there. And then they pushed and got another tip from Rossi. But overall, Jets, defensive effort much more structurally sound. Though I do think that, again, it wasn't their A+, but I think it's natural that on a back-to-back that there's a little bit of let up after you build a lead the way that the Jets did. I would say that probably the most impressive part of the game, and you touched on it in the open. I mean, Lauren Brossoit, I don't think we can understate the effort. Yeah, he gave up 3 goals, but two of them are essentially, one is a great redirection, one is a backdoor tap on a power play goal, and otherwise Lauren Brossoit was outstanding especially in the second period, Sean, where the Jets were vastly outshot. What was it, 17-6? I think somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, so I mean, Sean Monahan continues to flourish after slower offensive start for some folks. Nothing, those first 4 games, I don't think we'll be talking about them very much. And outside of the fact that I thought that Monahan was, as I said at the time, looking more and more comfortable each and every game, and that just continues to happen. Rick Bowness absolutely loves what he's seeing from Sean Monahan. I think it's quite evident. I mean, we've been discussing, and maybe some folks have been debating the fact that the Jets have been talking about a number 2 center for a long time. And Sean, I mean, the Jets brought back Paul Stastny when I think he was 34 years old. So I can't imagine they don't take a run at trying to keep him around here, knowing what we know about the fact the Jets loved him in his draft year. I mean, he's 29 years old. So like, I have to think that the Jets, now this is something they can sort out in the summertime, but I just think that Lauren Brossoit was really good, and for me, Monahan is a guy that is very much on the Jets' radar, and I don't think it's a slam dunk that he's just a rental who spends a couple months and carries on to his next stoppage. I think that there's a mutual interest here, and it's 5 goals now in 7 games. Sean Monahan, 29, he'll be 30 on October 12th. Yes, of course, when you're looking at a guy who's about to turn 30, you have to worry about term to a degree. But for me, Sean, yes, we know there's tons of prospects in the pipeline. Will Brad Lambert hit as a center? We're not sure. Chaz Lucius has had a ton of injury issues. I would take the chance of having to potentially move Lambert back to the wing and try to sign Sean Monahan. I mean, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, I can't imagine that that's something. Yeah, obviously he's going to want to raise from what he's making, just under $2 million.
No doubt.
But on a 3-year deal, I would be very comfortable if I were Kevin Cheveldayoff, and looking at probably trying to, we talk about the window the Jets have. This looks like a guy who's perfect. He plays in all situations. He's now helping out on the penalty kill, great on the face-off, scoring goals. His ability to play on the bumper has really opened up a multiple options for the Jets power play. We'll dig into that after we step away from the buffet here. I know you touched on it, but Monahan's been absolutely dynamite for the Jets, and Gabriel Velarde's a tipping machine. He's the next Joe Pavelski right now, and he's really on a roll, especially when it comes to the power play. I loved what he said, Sean, to the reporters downstairs about the nonverbal communication with Josh Morrissey, and just Morrissey, intentionally shooting it wide to a place
that was
where
me.
only
That
he
was
can
me who
tip it.
brought that up.
Well
I
done,
noticed
well
it. I
done.
just wanted to set the plate for him. Anyway.
There you go. Nicely done as usual. But yeah, I mean, and you touched on it also. Jets' third line had not been contributing as much offensively of late. Guess what? Today they get a reward. I thought that they really set the table, Sean, before that first goal with a really good offensive zone shift. And, they get a big one right after the first power play marker. There's Mason Appleton. That was a bit leaky. I didn't see the replay strongly enough, Sean. Was that Fleury was he screened, or what was going on with the reaction there?
He got caught sleeping. He got caught
Okay.
sleeping. Like, if you're an NHL goaltender and you're going to leave the top corner on the short side that wide open, you deserve what's coming. When he got scored on, I saw the reaction that he had, and the reaction was like, okay, I deserve that. That's to me like why I agree with you on the idea that I do think that the major difference in this game was LB. I think there's a lot, and people are already diving into the keg save of the games. And the breakaway on Rossi is a big one. There's one I'm going to get to later. I want to save it for later because I don't know that anyone else is going to have it. But to me, I think the game turned on that save. I'll give a hint. It's in the first period, but yeah, that's one where Fleury, got caught sleeping. And this is the one thing I've said before about this Winnipeg Jets team in the past, is that I think the Jets are a team that has that ability to not have the mental errors, not have the mistakes, stay a little bit more focused. That's a time where Marc-Andre Fleury didn't have focus. Great goaltender, right? Didn't have focus at a time of the game that ended up being extremely important. That wasn't a goal they could allow after just allowing a goal to all of a sudden make it 2-0. To me, that's the difference in the game. That piles up, and then what happens at the other end, I'll get it. I do think my keg save of the game was a really, really important point in the game, but I digress. I want to transition this, Ken, straight away to the power play, and I'll just start on what I think is working well with the power play, because we're talking about Sean Monahan. And this is it for me. Sean Monahan is playing that bumper spot, and he's doing it in a way, the subtleties of how he positions himself and how he opens himself up means that when the puck is over on Mark Scheifele's side, the player that usually moves out to cut off passing lanes, both to he, but also to Gabe Vilardi down low, is not as confident moving out towards Scheifele, because Monahan is getting himself into a position where you have to be concerned about Scheifele getting him the puck and him getting the shot. So that guy's taking away the pass to Sean Monahan. But what that's doing is it's allowing Mark Scheifele to move it down to Gabe Vilardi at will, and Gabe Vilardi has all the time in the world to try and a power move towards the net, which we saw from him a bunch of times tonight, to try and move that puck then straight up to the bumper in Sean Monahan, or to try and move it over with the backhand pass like he tried to do with Kyle Connor. So to me, what you're seeing suddenly, Gabe Vilardi has a whole bunch of real estate in front of the net. That's Sean Monahan who's creating that. And listen, we talked about this, and what we just had this conversation in one of the previous Kenny and Rennies about if you were scouting the Winnipeg Jets the game before, now you needed to respond to that. Well, this is another example. The Minnesota Wild coaches on a quick turnover came in here and saw Sean Monahan score a hat trick and create a whole bunch of problems in front of the net from that bumper spot for the Winnipeg Jets power play. So what did they do? They drew up a plan to try and make sure he didn't have that same kind of night. And in doing so, opened everything up for Gabe Vilardi. And then Gabe Vilardi takes advantage of that. But it also opens up Josh Morrissey up top now. And the other thing that I thought Gabe Vilardi had a real good take on this was, this is how I would suggest things go for most power plays. It's moving the puck around to try and open up that one or two options, right? So the puck goes to a spot, usually a guy's standing still, and he's never going to shoot it. He's just trying to get a guy to move so he can get it to the real guy they want to score. Tonight, Gabe Vilardi looked dangerous on the power play multiple times. Kyle Connor got a shot that was a dangerous shot during that game. Josh Morrissey gets that shot from the point that's redirected and ends up in the back of the net. Sean Monahan looked dangerous at different points. And Mark Scheifele, in that first period on the power play before they scored the first goal, moved in and ripped a shot twice from a really dangerous spot. The Winnipeg Jets power play now isn't suddenly just looking dangerous in a couple spots, finding one thing that worked. They look dangerous everywhere. And I will say Sean Monahan came in right off the bat. He looked good in the bumper spot, but now he's doing the subtleties, or let's just say the Winnipeg Jets players who are playing around him, because he's now the nucleus of that power play. The Winnipeg Jets players around him have picked up on the subtleties of Sean Monahan's game, know how to play off of it. And this literally is one player coming in and opening up all the things that Brad Lauer has been trying to do. This could just very much be a situation, Ken, where we've seen through the entirety of the year, Brad Lauer had a good plan. Maybe they just didn't have the personnel to pull it off. Really good players elevate everyone around them. Right now, Sean Monahan is the guy that is elevating that power play and making it as dangerous as it is.
Yeah, no doubt. He's been a massive addition. I also think that getting more touches for Gabriel Vilardi is essential, and I also love the fact that Mark Scheifele's moving the puck quicker. He's not getting rewarded with as many, again, he had the reward on Saturday with a 4-pointer, but today, even though I don't think he was involved in the assists on either of the power play goals, he's involved. He's getting touches. He's moving it around a little bit quicker. He's finding quiet zones for Gabriel Vilardi down low, whether that creates an opportunity. I mean, we saw an unbelievable save by Marc-Andre Fleury on one of the early power plays, Sean, when Scheifele went to Vilardi and Vilardi went between the legs and tried to go roof daddy with the between the legs shot. He got a lot on it, and Fleury just got the glove out. I mean, for me, it's definitely Monahan is really making a humongous difference. And the thing with Monahan, Sean, that we're seeing in the bumper, it's not just standing in the high slot. He's moving around, creating different lanes, not only for
Exactly.
himself, but for other people, as you touched on.
Those are those subtleties.
For me, it's all about spacing. The Jets spacing before, not only were they static and kind of stationary, they also weren't really getting any motion. And now the motion is happening on a bunch of different spots. Scheifele's opening himself up for shot opportunities. Josh Morrissey's seeing more lanes available to him. And if they start to cheat down on Vilardi, that's going to mean that the one-timer to Kyle Connor is going to be wide open. So to me, Monahan has been a massive addition, but I also love the number of touches that Vilardi's getting. Vilardi just gets more and more confidence. He went through a little bit of a tough spell there, a dry spell where, coming off that, injury, lower body issue that he had suffered against whether it was against Boston or, it was against Ottawa before that in Boston. So for me, starting to move well, getting to the net really well also. And he's a guy that just has enormous confidence, and you can tell. This guy loves to score. He loves to get his nose dirty around the net. We've mentioned how Nino Niederreiter does that on the second unit. Right now, Vilardi's doing an exceptional job. But yeah, I love what Monahan's doing. And I hate to go. I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but PDJ NYC, he wants me to pump the brakes here on Monahan. This is not about a 5-game sample. The Jets have been trying to solve their second line center issues for an eternity, essentially. So I'm not saying he's the be-all and end-all. I'm saying that this is a very smart person who the team has had interest in for years, multiple years, basically over a decade. So I think it's worth exploring. So for that, I'm handing out PDJ NYC. He's getting the wake-up call from Pristine Roofing right now. I'm sorry, it's an early wake-up call, and I don't mean to go at the chat room, and I think, no, I respect your opinion, but it's wake-up territory, so we're going to it right now.
I love it. I love it when the chat room earns the wake-up call, because it's the salty Kenny, and sometimes I miss salty Kenny. Things have been going too good in Ken's life for too long because the saltiness is dried up. He doesn't go after the audience like he has in the past. I love it when he does it. It's just good stuff. And so right off the bat, that means great job, Ken, with the wake-up call. And of course, that means it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 1-204-981-6289. Rick's the guy you want to get down to your place if you've got any roofing, siding, exterior needs. He's the guy who will tell you exactly what you need to do, all the steps to go forward. And if you choose to go with Pristine, he'll make sure it's set up and gets executed from beginning to end. Of course, you can always give Pristine Roofing a call at 1-204-237-7663. Ken,
to keep your engagement, PYD NYC, who would you suggest the Jets go after or have in the system that can do that job? If you don't, you say you like Vilardi, but pump the brakes. And the Jets were smart to sign Niederreiter. Yes, he went through a dry spell, 1 goal in 19 games today before the empty netter. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be valuable. I mean, the guy does other things than score. He's still having a great year.
Before we close out the Sean Monahan conversation, because the whole show can't be about him, I just want to get your thoughts on something interesting you said about how the Jets have had their eyes on him for years. Like, they liked him in his draft year, the idea of trying to get him and bring him in. And I know I covered a couple Canadians games this year and had a conversation with Marty St. Louis about him and said, like, listen, what people around the league aren't getting is this guy's been like injured to the point that he wasn't sure if his body would allow him to have a good life post hockey, never mind allow him to play hockey. And he got through that injury. So what we're seeing from Sean Monahan is like maybe a bit of a cheat code, in that what we've seen from him for the last 4 or 5 years has been a player whose body was just not allowing him to play the game the way he was capable of playing the game. I've always thought, I didn't think he had quite as much, I don't know even if I want to say grit. Boring Sean Monahan says, I smiled once, it didn't suit me. But I've always thought he was a comparable player to Mark Scheifele, like maybe a Mark Scheifele light or something like that. But I understand why the Jets like him. One thing about the Jets, you get a guy like Sean Monahan, they had their eyes on him for years. They stay patient. They get an opportunity. They finally bring him in. They did the same thing with Brendan Dillon, right? They wanted Brendan Dillon when he was in San Jose. They didn't get him. He goes to the Washington Capitals, but they stay with him and they get him after a while. To me, this is a sign that Rick Bowness is out there and he's got a list of guys that are his like wish list, right? But they're on his wish list because I think he knows that those players are the kind of players that are going to fit his system. I guess, Ken, it's just I'm giving the floor to you to talk about Kevin Cheveldayoff and now what he's found in Sean Monahan, and just a continuation of, this is the next in the long line of moves that he's done recently that are like the Vladislav Domestikov, the Nino Niederreiter. What is it about Kevin Cheveldayoff that he seems to be, I won't even say it like this, not necessarily find guys who fit the system, but finding guys that end up coming to Winnipeg and basically being the best version of that player that we've seen before. Vladimir Domestikov here is probably the best version of Vladimir Domestikov we've seen in the league, and he's been a good player around a lot of teams. Nino Niederreiter is probably the best version of Nino Niederreiter that we've seen in the NHL, and now it's starting to look like there's potential for Sean Monahan to have the best stretch of hockey in his career that he's ever had right here in Winnipeg, playing for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff is, had a long list or run of smart pickups. There's no doubt about that. Going back to the Andrew Kopp trade, I would say, and even, bringing Paul Stastny back the second time was a smart move. I mean, it was. I mean, yeah, the Jets faded that year, but it wasn't because of Stastny. I mean, he just picked up his 500th win on Saturday night. I mean, yes, we know he's been there a long time. Second, I think now to Doug Armstrong in terms of longevity for general managers. Yeah, we know there have been some hiccups here in the last stretch of time, but Kevin Cheveldayoff's on a remarkable run, and Sean Monahan is the latest move. Kind of not, I wouldn't call it under the radar, because Sean Monahan is a pretty well-known commodity, top 10 pick, a guy who's been around the league a long time, battled through some serious injuries, but, there was lots of talk about, the Jets got outbid on Elias Lindholm. Well, yeah, that's true, but they also got a guy that they were very high on. I mean, we'll see who's the better player. And those guys are going to have plenty of time to show who's the better acquisition or the better fit for their particular team. But the Jets have completely changed the way that they play, Sean. The style of player that they're bringing in. We know there have been a ton of times where the Jets were, they went the other way to the skill side, and now they've added some guys who are skilled, but also, play with a bit of an edge and have a little bit more experience. The one thing they were lacking, they don't have a ton of, playoff experience. Sean Monahan's a guy who has some. Niederreiter, lots of these guys have played at a high level, been to conference finals and everything else. And Laurent Brossoit is the only guy I think who's won a Stanley Cup. So if we're looking at the deadline here, a couple weeks until the deadline, Sean, you and I agree on this. We still think the Jets are going to be active. I won't be the least bit surprised if they bring in a Stanley Cup winner, or B, someone who has a lot of Stanley Cup experience. I'm not saying it's an essential quality. I'm saying that they are going to probably bring a high character player in. Whether that's a top 4 D-man or someone to help on the third pairing, we're not sure yet. And, we're running out of runway to see if Ville Heinola will get a shot to play at the NHL level before March 8th or 9th. But I do think the Jets are still going to be active, but the Jets, Kevin Cheveldayoff deserves credit where credit is due. Some of the guys didn't work out in the past, but he's been on a pretty good run of players, as you mentioned, that are providing the best version of themselves. And here's the thing. Those guys have to be the best version of themselves. They have been during the year, but they're going to have to be when it comes to April, May, and June, potentially for them, if they're going to go on an extended run. So we'll have to see where it goes from there. But right now, he's pulled a lot of smart strings.
Hey, I'm just going to get into this quick because I've been forgetting to do this quite a bit. Russ Fringe Minority Peters calls for it. Headband anyone. So let's do it. Let's make it a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's hit it. Got to tell you, Kenny, I was getting pretty excited seeing all this chatter in the chat room here about it. Kept hearing all this about Sean and his great hair over and over again. It took me, 5, 6, 7 comments before I realized they were talking about Sean Monahan. I thought they were talking about me for a second there. That's problematic. Anyways, let's get to Big Stan. People want to talk about Big Stan. I thought it was interesting. We had both said that we thought that Big Stan's best game that he played in the NHL was his last game before Brendan Dillon came back. And we had talked about the idea of unfortunate for him, he does that in a situation where he's going to be taken out of the lineup. Thought it was very interesting that Rick Bonus's conversation tonight about the guys who were pulled out of the lineup was basically that he didn't deserve to be taken out, so they were going to find a way to get him back in. The team doesn't play its best. You bring in a couple guys, bring in a little bit of new blood. Let guys know that they can't just sit in those spots. They got to earn those spots. Big Stan comes in. I texted you this. I think that Logan Stanley, for the first time in his career, knows what his identity should be at the NHL level and is heading out and executing it now game after game. And in my mind, giving him the best ability to show that he belongs in the NHL. Now, whether or not that's with the Winnipeg Jets and finding a spot here, or whether or not the Winnipeg Jets are going to try and make some trades like we're talking about, at least he's in a position now where people who've looked at the past and said, people love this line, but okay, he's 6'7". What else can he do for me? I thought tonight was a very good example of what Logan Stanley is able to bring to your lineup if given the opportunity. What are you seeing from him?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't think he just figured out what his role is. I think he's just figuring out that he needs to be a little bit more consistent in playing that physical style. I think he's always known what he's been asked to do. I just think that Logan's been through, there were injuries. Yes, there were some extenuating circumstances. Yes, but, I mean, this is the kind of, a guy who's a big guy that gets around okay for his size, can move the puck with exits on occasion. When he's playing confidently and assertively, but he just has not found the consistency at this level. I mean, let's not forget, this is a guy who started ahead of Dylan Samberg on opening night last season, I want to say, at the start of last season. So it's not like he hasn't had opportunity. He's had some stumbles. He's had some roadblocks. He's had guys pass him on the depth chart, but the idea was always that a big, strong guy could provide a physical presence. And some people don't like fighting. I get it, but I'm sorry. Like if you're Logan Stanley and Mark Scheifele gets crumpled from behind, I don't think there was intent by Jacob Middleton in this case, but that doesn't matter. It was an awkward hit from behind. And like my perfect example of Logan Stanley is this. Last year or 2 years, no, it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Jets are playing Nashville, Sean. Tanner Jeannot smokes his defense partner Nate Schmidt from behind. He waited to ask Tanner Jeannot if he wanted to go. He didn't tell him they were going. Today, he told Jacob Middleton that they were going after that hit happened. And Middleton, knowing the history with Kirill Kaprizov and how the Wild feel about Stanley, he was a willing combatant.
Oh, he wanted it.
Good for him to...
Yeah.
Logan Stanley knows that Jacob Middleton is a tough customer. He challenged Middleton. This was not a, hey, you can't do that. He said, let's go, and they went. So that's part of it. I'm not saying Logan Stanley has to fight every single game, but he needs to be a physical presence. He needs to move the puck efficiently, and he needs to be a good penalty killer. I mean, one of his strengths is his wingspan and his ability to get clears, which is something that the Jets penalty kill has struggled with this year. So, I mean, has he done enough to be the number 6 guy right now? No, not yet. Not after 2 games where he was pretty, again, he wasn't great today, but he was effective at times. So, I mean, we'll see where this goes, but Logan Stanley's trying to help his cause, and he's had 2 games where he's looked like a capable player. So we'll see where that leads. I mean, I'm not willing to say, hey, right now Logan Stanley should be ahead of Nate Schmidt. I'm not here to say that, but when you're looking to mix things up a little bit on a back-to-back, I can understand why the decision was made, and Logan Stanley did his best to show that he can have something to offer. It didn't go quite as well for Rasmus Kupari today, Sean. 6 minutes and not a whole lot happening. I mean, he hasn't played since January 27th. He's kind of become the odd man out. I didn't mind his game, but he didn't pop. Like, I don't think that Kupari would have done enough to get another game on Friday against the Chicago Blackhawks. But I still think that there's something there with Kupari. But right now, he's not feeling confident or getting enough done that he's going to push someone out of the lineup based on what we saw. I mean, Rick was quick to say, I mean, he skipped him a bunch of times or a couple times in the third period. But I mean, if you're not contributing on special teams on the fourth line, you're not playing much, right? I mean, that's that simple.
Yeah, I feel validated by a lot of what you just said there. I'm gonna say this, you know, I
Surprise.
know a lot of you listening here, and a lot of you in the chat room have a hard time admitting when Renny was right. But when everyone was telling you Rasmus Kupari was the next big thing in Winnipeg, Renny was telling you, I'm not seeing what everybody else is seeing. And I think at this stage, some of you have to finally admit that you are finally seeing what Renny was seeing in the beginning here. I mean, Rasmus Kupari got jump back into the lineup here, and Rasmus Kupari was given a spot in the Jets lineup at the beginning that he didn't have to earn. And I say that in the way, I'm not saying that I guess what I'm saying is he was given a long landing strip to kind of show what he was capable of doing in a place where, you know, Gus wasn't, you know, didn't have that kind of landing strip to do it. He had to come in and he had to like carve out his ice time when he got in there. He's now found himself, Rasmus Kupari, in the situation where he's got to get in, and we got to start talking about him the same way that we've talked about Logan Stanley, or the same way that I've talked about Billy Hainla in the past.
Games.
What's
21
that?
games is not a super long landing.
It's a long time to go with 1 point.
Yes, but I mean, Logan's been here, drafted in 2016. I mean, I don't think that they're apples to apples.
No, you're not here. You're not listening to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he's now been relegated to the same place that a guy like Logan Stanley is. He's living a lifestyle now where if he gets a shot in the NHL, he's got to take that game and show what he's capable of doing. It's a good point that you made, that he came in here tonight and did Rasmus Kupari do something tonight that the Jets are like, wow, we can't keep him out of the lineup anymore? No, we didn't see that. He went from being given a spot on this team to now being a guy who's a fringe NHLer, and can he get in the lineup? And if he gets in, can he do something to stay in the lineup? That's where he is right now. And to be honest, I think I saw somewhere that it was he had gone like the third most time in the NHL without getting a point, without scoring a goal. So I mean, he is, you know, a league leader at not producing, and it's catching up with him in this situation. The other thing that you were talking about there is you talked about Middleton taking Scheifele into the boards, and whether or not he meant it or not. You said this. I love that you said these words. You said, it doesn't matter. It was very much The Rock. It doesn't matter whether he went to take it into the boards, because, Ken, you are echoing the exact words that I said about Brendan Dillon when he cross-checked Kaprizov in the ribs and took him out of the lineup. And at that time, everyone in Winnipeg was bending over backwards and saying, well, but he didn't mean to do it. Never, that play happens 100 times a game or whatever. I say the same words. I think you're 100% right in this situation, because when your star, something happens to them, especially if it's one of the heavier players on the other team, whether it's intentional or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in that situation. If that guy's gone to tell something, you have to show up to bat for your star in that situation. So I agree with you 100%. Logan Stanley was standing off to the side. Middleton made it clear he didn't intend to do that, but he did it. He did it. And what Logan Stanley, the message that he sent was, it doesn't matter if you meant to do it or if you didn't mean to do it. He said something to him. Middleton was going to oblige. Middleton's just trying to find a way to get things going here. He wasn't going to back down. But Logan Stanley makes himself useful in that situation. Logan Stanley was punishing tonight. I know he took that cross-check. And boy, oh boy, if we're looking for an embellishment penalty, the cross-check that he delivers, forget which player he did it against, but there was an embellishment.
Brandon Duhaime, and it was an absolute joke.
Yes, that was Brandon Duhaime. That was an embellishment penalty waiting to happen. But regardless, Brandon Duhaime leaves the ice, and he's kind of roughed up a bit. Stan's a big, strong guy, right? Like, if he leaves his mark on the game in a manner that he can be somewhat sound, not somewhat sound, if he can be sound defensively, but his mark on the game is that he gets out there and he leaves other teams thinking about him like, God, that 6'7" guy, when he delivers that cross check, it hurts. Or when I did this to Mark Scheifele, he was calling me out and he was chirping. You could see he was doing some chirping here tonight. Logan Stanley was in the minds of the Minnesota Wild. I think he's the kind of player that when he's playing the type of game that he should play, he's the kind of game that the other team leaves and 3 or 4 or 5 guys on the other team walk away and say, God, that Logan Stanley, they're a little bit miffed about him. That's the kind of game he needs to focus on playing. That's the game that I think he's been playing. He's at the very least, I'm not saying now he's top 6 in the Jets and he needs to stay there, but he's at least put himself in the conversation as being an option that they can confidently go in with and use. And that just makes the Jets that much deeper. It creates more competition. It's a good thing for the Jets. It also puts them in a position where for the first time in a long time, if I'm another team, I'm looking at Logan Stanley and saying, okay, if he can do that, and he can do that consistently, maybe now if I'm making a trade and the Jets are trying to send a package back and saying, and we'll put Logan Stanley in there, maybe it's got some value now. And it's not just the Jets adding a guy who's, in his mid-20s and hasn't been able to hang on in the NHL. Ken, give Sweet Lou a
just a quick one before I go to that.
Sure.
For the folks who are asking, Rick Bowness was asked directly. I mean, Morgan Barron was dealing with a little bit of an illness the other day. He called both Nate Schmidt and Morgan Barron healthy scratches, just for the record. So that's where things are at on that front. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if both players are back in the lineup on Friday night. But for those of you who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
I wanted to just give a little bit of the shout out to Cambrian Credit Union and talk, just go back to the power play about how well that's worked out. All of a sudden, this looks like a crazy, cohesive power play unit. And again, I think Sean Monahan's been the key to opening that wide up, but that's great teamwork that we're seeing from that line. And hey, from answering members' calls in less than 1 minute to having all their advisors available by video from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., it makes it so easy to be a Cambrian member because of the teamwork they're always showing. It's obvious that the whole team at Cambrian cares about giving you great service. Well done, Cambrian. Let's move on to third line. Okay, I thought, never mind the fact that in a heavy game like this, I'm going to use very specific examples from this game. The first shift of the game, they go out and I think they kind of set the tone. They're going up against Kirill Kaprizov's line. I think they have a great shift. Rick Bowness talked about it. This is their momentum line. He likes to put them out for the first shift of the periods. Sometimes he likes to put them out right after his team scores. Sometimes he likes to put them out right after the other team scores. Basically, they are the momentum generator or they're the momentum halter for the other team. Were massively successful with that at the beginning of the year. And I think it really was the true superpower of that third line. Yeah, they're getting some goals and stuff like that, but what they did was they kept things from snowballing against the Winnipeg Jets, but they also added to the snowball for the Winnipeg Jets. I thought they did that tonight. That goal that they get from Mason Appleton, even though I think it's terribly played, by Fleury, I still do think that the Jets go out, they get that goal. And regardless of that puck going in or not, it's a shift in which the next shift, the third line goes out, takes it into the opposition's end, and just grinds the heck out of them. Third period, when the Jets needed to get back on the horse after they didn't have a good second period, go back and watch it. The first shift of that third period is the third line going out there and just grinding and churning and taking it over. This is the thing that made them the best third line in hockey at the beginning of the year. This is the greatest sign I've seen of them getting back at that. And Ken, of course, it happens after a podcast in which I talked about preaching patience, because we know they can do that, and you just got to have patience for them to get back to it. That's what I saw. What'd you see?
Yeah, I saw a team that was, a line that was very determined. Again, we know that the goals have dried up to a degree for that line, but they can still impact the game without scoring. But the Jets are a way more dangerous team when that line is producing offensively. We've talked a ton about Cole Perfetti, and rightfully so. But Adam Lowry had also gone 10 games without a point, Sean. I mean, this is a guy who has offensive ability, and the Jets need him contributing offensively. But I agree with you. I thought that their first shift against the Kaprizov line was excellent. They generated some zone time and really set the tone and set the table in this game. And they kind of got the ball rolling. Jets get an early power play goal. Appleton scores the second one. The Fleury chance start. I thought the building was into it today.
Yes.
Loved the atmosphere in there. Thank you, Hartman was pretty hilarious. And hey, people can say whatever they want about Mark Scheifele, but I applaud Mark Scheifele. He got into Ryan Hartman's face to the point where the linesman unnecessarily tossed Hartman out of the faceoff circle in the neutral zone, Sean, because they were probably worried that Hartman was going to stick Scheifele in the face. Scheifele faked like he was going to hit him on the same shift, and then Hartman got the chicken wing underneath him and took a dumb penalty where Mark Scheifele was in not a dangerous area. So,
yeah.
Hartman had a couple plays where, looked like he might cheap shot someone, but he kept it under control. And, the game didn't have the same kind of temperature as we thought it might, but it was still a fun game.
It would. Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this before. Pat Maroon is not in the game. Marcus Foligno is the guy who would be stirring the pot with big time hits. Outside of Hartman and whatever else. But again, still a fun game. Jets needed to respond. Yes, they had a leaky second period with some poor puck management, but their third was excellent. And again, power play, Sean, it's almost shocking to say this. We talked so much about the power play today already, and I'll get back to Lowry in a second. Jets hadn't had a game or a stretch of 3 games with 2 power play goals consecutively for 3 games since 2012. 2012. That's a ridiculous length of time, and it just shows you how much that power play is clicking of late. I loved everything about Lowry's game, Sean, and I'm not surprised in the least. We've talked ad nauseum, and rightfully so, about how great a job that Adam Lowry has done in the leadership department. I love the fact that Rick Bowness started that line. I expected that he would, and they were there to send a message, set the tone. Monday afternoon was unacceptable. They set the tone for how the Jets needed to play, and the team followed. There's no doubt about that. They followed, and, Nino Niederreiter, as I mentioned, just 2 points in the last 14 games. It's a long stretch of time, but he got rewarded with an empty netter. I mean, that's what a third line does. You grind away, you win your matchup, and yeah, Kaprizov got involved. Power play goal and then a tip in where they weren't on the ice. But when they were on the ice against Lowry, Lowry's line did an excellent job.
Maul says here, Stanley's the best defenseman now, apparently, because he fought. Yikes, these takes sometimes. Maul, if you can't keep up, I'll have to send you a transcript after the show. You gotta try and understand what we're saying. At least try to understand what we're saying.
Quickly, Ken, before we get to the thing, Declan Chisholm, excellent game today, Sean. I mean, Zach Bogosian left with injury late in the first, 18 minutes and change. Had a great chat with Declan before the game. He spoke with Mike McIntyre and a couple of the Wild writers. And it's so excited. And the best quote of the entire exchange, he was asked about what it was like being on the other side of the rivalry. And he's like, I'm just happy to be involved in the rivalry because now he gets to play in it. I mean, blocking shots, running the second power play, chipped in his first ever
penalty at the NHL level,
chipped in an assist. I mean, just a fun evening for him. I mean, it would have been emotional for him. For sure, coming back in here. He wanted it to work out here, but, when it doesn't work out, you got to hope that it works out somewhere else, and it has so far. It's a very small sample, but it's clear why he's made a positive impression on Wild head coach John Hynes, and it's pretty clear he's made a good impression on his teammates so far.
Hey, someone I can't find one of his comments, but Tyler Sat. Oh, here we go. Tyler Sattler says Healer really needs a confidence boosting goal. You know who doesn't need a confidence boost? It's Tyler Sattler, the quality control guy for the beer at TCB. He's got nothing but confidence, as he should. His product is impeccable. I'm just gonna throw this out there because I know we were talking about this last night. We were talking about the potential for the summertime and I've even pitched it to the big wigs at TCB yet, but for like a Kenny and Renny brewery tour type of thing, event, where we would get like maybe if 40 people came, if 60 people came in, 20 people at a time would go through, and Tyler would take us through the tour that he took us through, Ken, and he showed us all the process of going through the beer. There was a lot of people who were happy about that. And Tyler, I wanted to say, I went out, took the wife out for lunch today, and ran into Lauren, who you met and chatted with across the table from you. And he came to me as I was leaving, and he said, like, I hope you were serious about that idea, because I've got like 17 people just in my close group who would be all over it. So folks, if that's something you'd be interested in, let us know. Tyler is a genius, and I can sit and listen to him talk about beer all day long. And when he takes you through the building and the process that they go through, it's a lot of fun. And it would probably be just a good excuse to get the Kenny and Renny crew together during the summertime, so we don't entirely lose touch with each other in that situation. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there. If people were down with that, they can like message us. They can talk about it in the chat room. I think it would be something that would be a ton of fun to do, because I just love talking about that kind of stuff. Anyways, you got a Johnson Group got you covered play of the game, Ken.
Yeah, I just think that Laurent Brossoit's effort was worthy of the award today. I loved he had a strong start to the game and just an exceptional second period where his team was kind of sleeping. And I really loved the effort by Brossoit. He's been excellent. That's his 14th start, Sean. 20, what do we got now? 28 left in the regular season. I think that Brossoit will get 8 of those, and there will be 20 for Hellebuck. That will be a 60 to 22 split, roughly in that neighborhood. I think that's a good number for Brossoit, even though he's deserving of more, obviously. But I mean, again, we know that you asked him, Sean. You should say how Brossoit responded to having to stay sharp for an extended period of time, like he has this year.
Well, he gave
a great answer.
Said he gave a great, and I knew it. It's one of those questions where I was like, I'm going to ask him this, and he's going to absolutely knock it out of the park. But he said he's probably maybe the most experienced goaltender in all the NHL at being like, being a starter, but also having to be a backup at the same time. I think it's remarkable what he's done. And I've been vocal, and I've said this all year. I don't think there's a difference between the Winnipeg Jets if Laurent Brossoit's in between the pipes or Connor Hellebuck is in between the pipes. That is, in my opinion, this is not my way of bringing Connor Hellebuck down. This is my way of like saying this is a massive accomplishment for Laurent Brossoit. And Laurent Brossoit, to a degree, may have the tougher task in the two of them, because he's got to sit and wait for his opportunity. It's remarkable what he's been able to do here. Again, I think this is a different game. I think it was Maul, or maybe it was Bick Ronis. I'm not sure which one of it, had gone on and listed all the reasons why the Winnipeg Jets could have lost tonight or had no right winning. I wouldn't say no right winning, but he was entirely right. A lot of things tonight lined up to be a good game for the Minnesota Wild in this situation. I don't think there was a more important person on the ice tonight than Laurent Brossoit. So just the way he's handled this, to go from a guy who came here thinking that he was probably going to be the starter to now a guy, he could have been really upset. He could have been, like not able to get out of his head. And instead he's gone out and just been a constant positive force and a phenomenally performing athlete at the NHL level consistently. I think you nailed it with him.
Yeah, he's going to be a starter next year. We've talked about it.
No doubt. I mean,
starting in the NHL next year. No doubt.
I guess what we should probably be saying at this stage, Ken, to the audience is, because, knock on wood, as long as Connor Hellebuck stays healthy in the playoffs, you're probably seeing Laurent Brossoit's career with the Winnipeg Jets winding down in front of your eyes. You talked about, or Kenny just talked about it, how many more times we could expect to see him. Expect that will be the number of times you see him in a Winnipeg Jets jersey, because you don't play like he's playing right now and not get an opportunity somewhere else in the league to show what you can do. It's going to be deserved. Great guy, always great to deal with in the dressing room. Enjoy him, cherish him as long as he's a Winnipeg Jet. He's been an absolute banger. And no doubt our Johnson Group got you covered. Player of the game here tonight. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Kenny, your keg save of the game, my friend.
Oh, you nailed it earlier. Game is kind of getting a little bit wild in the second period, and Rossi gets the late breakaway, and Laurent Brossoit just stays with them so perfectly. I loved how, Sean, he was so focused. I don't know if people saw it on TV or not, but one of the plays after the whistle, one of the Wild players carried it in after the puck was blown down, and he didn't actually shoot it, but he kind of went in like he was going to deke Brossoit, even though the whistle had gone and the play had stopped, and Brossoit went down into the butterfly and stayed with him. But I loved his save on Rossi. He didn't overcommit. Rossi thought he could get him to move and open up to go 5-hole, and Brossoit just stayed with him so perfectly. I just thought he was locked in from the very beginning today, and I thought he was dynamite. And again, anyone who thought, oh, well, he gave up 4 on 21 shots against Philly in his first game out of the break, get ready for David Riddick time, second half collapse. You don't know anything about Laurent Brossoit if that's what you thought. This guy's been fantastic all year long. He's more than just a backup, even though he's only going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 starts. This guy's a guy that Connor Hellebuyck leans on constantly to talk hockey and goaltending about and with, and they're a great support network for one another, and soon they will be battling against one another when Laurent Brossoit takes his rightful place as a starter in the NHL next year.
Hey, he's got the playoff series lone victory in between those two. He won the duel last year and he had the better numbers to back it up. There was a play in the first period after the Jets scored 2 goals. I can't remember who shot it, but he got in. He was in the slot off to the right side in the first period, and he puts one top corner, and it's I don't think he gloved it and held it. Yeah, I think it's Boldy. Okay, so there you go. Boldy, one of the most lethal shooters on the Wild's team, and it's a glove save that it's not one of those ones where the guy shot it in his glove. It's one that's going in and it gets knocked away, swatted away by Laurent Brossoit in that situation. It was one of those ones that I don't think a lot of people saw it, but Fred, TSN camera guy, we were sitting watching the game together, and both of us were like, whoa, that's a huge save. At that moment in the game, I honestly think rather than, Jets going up 3-0 the way that they did and kind of cruising from there, I think if the Minnesota Wild score in that situation, it is an entirely different game. I said it at the beginning. I'm going to say it until this podcast is over. Laurent Brossoit was the biggest impact and the biggest effect on the outcome of this game. The Winnipeg Jets have a W in this situation because of Laurent Brossoit. That's my keg save of the game. We want to hear about your keg save of the game. If you do, share that with us. You are automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate to be used at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner of the keg save of the game from last podcast, the live podcast at TCB, is Official J Walks. Official J Walks, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, send me your email, and I will have the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of their 3 locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that means, Ken, it's time to go to the TCB Lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, lots of great options, and you could easily go with either one of the power play goals. But Sean, for me, because of the struggles we've been talking about in terms of goal scoring for Kyle Connor since his return from the knee injury, I loved everything about the play. DeMello gets it going north, and Gabriel Velarde, this is just an exceptional pass. And Sean, in a weekend where Jaromir Jagr had his jersey retired, I know it has nothing to do with Jagr, but thinking about the Penguins on the weekend, because that was my favorite team growing up. This was kind of almost Lemieux-like with Salt Lake Olympics. Scheifele, everyone thought Scheifele was taking the pass from Velarde. Scheifele leaves it for Kyle Connor, And Kyle Connor, absolute beautiful shot past Marc-Andre Fleury. That was just great patience by Velarde to find the trailer. And Scheifele goes to the net, creates a bit of a distraction, and just a beautiful shot for Kyle Connor. I understand that they had a little bit of an issue there on one of the goals for sure, and they didn't have their best night in terms of shots or scoring chances against. Yeah, a lot of their damage was on the power play. I get it, but that goal that got them to 3-0 early in the second period, that's not snake charmer. That's how you score off the rush with not cheating. That's a brilliant play all around, and that's why today I'm going with that as the Lamplighter, even though there were a number of great options, including just the remarkable tip. First from Velarde, but the Monahan tip is incredible,
Yeah.
Sean, because he does
Yeah.
it falling down. Just an absolute beauty. But for me, I'm going with the Kyle Connor goal.
I'm going with Monahan, and I'm going A because that's a phenomenal hand-eye while you're fighting somebody off. But you could tell he redirects it and he gets pushed down. And as he's falling, he turns and looks the other way, and he looks right where the puck goes. Right? He's not trying to find it. He redirects it from the far side and knows that he's redirected it over to the right-hand post. And he goes and he looks for it. This is like hand-eye coordination to the max. It's
Precision.
I just think one of those beautiful hockey goals. Like, this is a hockey goal. The kind of things that like only super, super talented guys can pull off. But for the same reason too, that if we're taking a look, okay, now suddenly the power play is going, suddenly the juice is going, and people feel good about that there. And we talked about it a little while ago, Ken, before it got going. After they score on that power play, we talked about the potential to get it going. We're seeing the right things. Once again, good analysis by you and I. We said we expected things to turn around and there be a reason to believe in the power play going forward, and they've resulted like this. Well, to me, this is one of those moments where the second line, that's a second line goal, right? And now what you're starting to see, I think, is the potential for that second line to maybe start waking up. There was Perfetti debate on our last show. There was a lot of Perfetti debate after the show was over with a lot of people in the audience there. If there's potential for that line to get going, I think that could be the little bit of the spark that started the fire. Nikolai Ehlers sends it up top. They fire it at the net. This is a good hockey goal. If they start trying to score those hockey goals and get some confidence underneath them, and no doubt Sean Monahan has confidence right now, then they start opening up the other parts of their game where they snap the puck around. You start to open up the Cole Perfetti, high IQ part of his game and finding guys.
Yeah.
You start to open up the speed coming from Nick Ehlers and getting the puck towards the net. And then maybe Sean Monahan knows how to play off that. Regardless, I'm always big on a team and seeing if they're working towards solving the problems that they have. And we've seen it recently. They worked on getting Monahan into the fold. They worked on getting the power play going. To me, this is potential to be the first step in them starting to get that second line going, because as good as this team has been, and the fact that right now they're once again pushing to challenge for first place in the Central Division, I do not see this team doing very much in the playoffs if they cannot get that second scoring line going. They need to do that, which is why I think that is the TCB Lamplighter of the game. But it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think, because if you share with us your Lamplighter of the game, you are automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends and Ty Sattler at Trans Canada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, you can head on down to Trans Canada Brewing Company and join them in their tap room at 11290 Keniston Boulevard. I was corrected by Pat Kanuga because I think I called it Avenue last time. Boulevard. Where we had our Kenny and Renny live event. We wanted to say thanks again to all the folks who came out. That was a blast. I had a great time. Someone at work today said, "You sound a little, are you okay? Are you doing okay? Your voice sounds a little, and I said, unfortunately with Renny, if I have a couple blueberries, it acts as loudmouth soup for me. So I got a little loud by the end of the night. The voice got a little bit beat up, but that's all part of the fun that we have there, and only one more opportunity to have that fun. One more Kenny and Renny live podcast is going to be coming up on April 6th. They are going to get the tickets ready on Eventbrite. Let's do it again. Let's do it all over again, folks. Have a good time. Ken, you got something to say?
Small room shows, because it's
Small room
Saturday
show
afternoon, so it means limited number of tickets available.
Yeah,
so you want to be there.
Yes. So it's funny because I talked to a number of people yesterday who went out and got the tickets right away. And I know there's definitely a late push that happens with that show. We saw it with this last one. The numbers kind of swelled and made it a big room show. We always love those big room shows. But if you want to be certain to get tickets this time around, maybe don't wait like you did this last time, because there's only a certain amount of people who will fit in that room. And once those tickets are sold, they're all gone and your opportunity to get into that room, folks. So anyways, April 6th, look into it. Kenny and Renny Eventbrite is where you can go find it. Just type in April 6th. You'll be able to find it. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be great. Other than that, time to announce our TCB Lamplighter winner for the last show. And that would be Scoots McScoots 369. Hey, Scoots, get a hold of me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name and your email address, and I will send a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at Transcanada Brewing Company, the nectar of the gods. That's it for us, folks. Let's shut this down here. Kenny, great job as usual. Chat room was on fire here today. I thought they were doing well, although I'm not going to give the credit there. Everyone's giving credit for T. Will for having a good showing in the chat room. If he did, and I'm not saying he did, but if he did, it's about time. He's like 1 for 485 if that's what happened here tonight. Well, come on. Hey, I get to defend myself, and this is how I do it, Ken. Anyways, and I want to say before we do get moving here, if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, the Pristine Roofing Company, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, the Johnson Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, and of course, Transcanada Brewing Company and the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. Can't wait to do this all over again. Next game, Jets versus Kenny.
Blackhawks on Friday night.
Blackhawks
from
on
the
Friday
United Center.
night.
We will both be at home covering it.
Yeah, you're not going there? No deep dish pizza for you?
Not this time, no. Anyone
heading there, go to Kuma's Corner for a burger. They're all named after heavy metal bands. I've said this before. They crank heavy metal the whole time you're in there. But honestly, Colin, my camera guy, says it's the best burger he's ever had before. It's a Renny special. So if you happen to be going down to catch that game, do yourself a favor. Go to Kuma's Corner and get yourself a burger. It'll be great. I promise. You got the Renny guarantee on that one. That's it for us, everybody. We'll chat with you after the game on Saturday. Thanks for joining us.